Blake, have you ever been trapped inside a death tunnel?
Toby, I become a biohazard in tight spaces, so I have to stay out of death tunnels.
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who recently evaporated the eyebrows of one of my coworkers with a fart, and I'm here with my co-host, who is the only human being indestructible enough to handle me in a death tunnel, Toby Walters.
What'd you say about yourself in small spaces?
That I'm a biohazard.
You're a biohazard in open spaces. I don't know what to tell you.
Last night at Fall Fest for church, I held in a fart like all night, and I was like, maybe it's safe. Almost everyone's gone. And I let a little bit of it out, and I was like, oh, dear heavens, I got to sprint to the other side of the room. Don't let it out until I'm gone.
Have you ever heard about like medical instances? People go into the doctor and the doctor's like, whoa, I don't know what that is, but let me bring in everybody. And like everybody starts to come. I feel like that's if somebody ever shoved a scope up your innards.
My colonoscopy is going to be like a news story for the whole like nation.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. National Enquirer material right there.
I dare you to pull that colonoscopy out of your butt and try to pivot over to your intro story now.
Wow. I mean, you can pivot from anything, Blake. It's just a simple process. Much like your colonoscopy.
Will not be.
So we were talking about my book. I'm sure our listeners are like, dude, shut up about your book. But I'm like, hey, I have a podcast, so I get to do what I want.
And I could use that book to wipe after my colonoscopy.
Oh, my gosh. So I'm qualified to speak on very little. I'm qualified to write on very little. But one thing I have a lot of experience about is being cheap.
And you're a good gatherer, Toby. Don't undersell yourself short.
Oh, totally.
You gather info.
So, like, this episode is actually one piece of information where I feel like I can actually keep up with the experts a little bit. Everything else, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Tell me your stories. And, oh, great, I can write about that. But in this instance, we're talking about essentially like creative solutions for, maximizing your budget, affording gear you can't do, like tactics to, achieve all those things. And so for me, it really started when I was a teenager and my dad suckered me into production, but then I immediately fell in love because I was like, gear.
It was an arranged marriage with
yes.
gear.
So when I was about 15, 16 years old, now our church had been around since the 1920s. And our sound system, to me, felt like it had been installed in the 1920s. And I know it was probably the 1970s, but at this point, like, it was old and it was nasty.
It was from the 19-something.
Yes, but we were still in the 19-something.
Shh. The kids like to make fun of the 19s now.
It's true, but you were born in the 19s.
Don't tell them.
So we're looking at redoing the sound system at our church, and our budget is, like, non-existent. So I think we came up with somewhere around like $15,000.
Was that before you did the embezzlement or after?
Well, we had to embezzle in order to get that money.
Gotcha.
Yes. So you got $15,000 now, 1990s dollars. Like that's a bit more than it is today, but still.
About $300 million now.
Yeah, exactly. So we decided, okay, we're going to have to do creative things in order to get the sound system and install it. And so we found a local installer who had worked at other churches, and he came recommended well to us. And he said, bruh, because obviously we're still saying that in the 1990s. It's like, with this level of budget, I'm going to need help. And my dad is like, great, Toby has nothing to do. So I was essentially the journeyman for the integration person. And so one of the fun things that we had to do, so you can hang speakers, you can run cables, soldering, I can move stuff, I can help the guy, place things. But one tricky thing was we had a concrete slab for a sanctuary floor, and we run a snake from the stage under the concrete slab to the sound booth, 125 feet away.
Well, the snake will just slither through, right?
Slither through a concrete slab?
What if you tied the snake to the snake? Oh, you need to go under it? Okay, you need to get a snake, tie it to a gopher, and then the gopher will thread the snake through the slab.
Sure. So we discovered one of the elders of the church who... I don't even know where to go with your snake story. One of the elders of the church said, listen, the heating system that we haven't used in decades, goes under the concrete slab, and there is a like catacomb crawl space under there.
Nope.
And if we can get somebody not too big to do this, we can get that snake all the way through from the stage to the sound booth. Enter teenage Toby. So, in order to do this, you have to go back behind the church and into the utility room. You walk into the utility room and there is a boiler. Blake, you've heard of boiler room. You ever seen a real boiler?
That's where they cook all the hot dogs.
So think of you watch, old apartment buildings in New York on shows and stuff, and down in the basement is the boiler room.
I don't watch sinful content, Toby. That's a you thing.
So they said, all right, we got to open up the boiler, and then Toby, you're going to have to get in.
No. No.
I'm not exaggerating the story. It's 100% true. So
Jim, how dare you? Jim is Toby's dad. You could have killed Toby.
So we unscrew the lid to the boiler, and I have to crawl in there, and then I have to crawl down into the tunnel, and 150 feet, I got to go, 40 feet one direction, and essentially I'm kind of under the stage, and then I have to turn right and go all the way 100 feet up. And it's about 2.5, 3 feet by 2.5, 3 feet under the sanctuary. Yeah. And so I spent hours of my life under there.
Hours?
Yeah. Pulling cables.
How many snakes did you run into? Was there little pieces of water underneath you?
I didn't, I'm sure there were some spiders. There certainly were no snakes. I mean, we're in San Diego area. There's not a lot of critters like that. It was really just trash and little construction pieces from probably the 1950s when that sanctuary was built.
And how many times were you afraid of a demon or a spirit or something? You can't turn your head to check behind
church.
you.
Demons aren't allowed to come into churches.
Have you ever heard the phrase, when the saints go out, the demons come in? They probably stay in that tunnel while we're all in church.
And one thing that was true is that where we were situated, our church, there were a lot of homeless that lived right around there. And so the homeless would break into the church and sort of camp out because the church was big and there were all these random rooms and stuff. So it was highly unlikely they'd be camping out in the crawl space under the sanctuary that you'd have to go through.
You could have had to do battle for your life.
But I'm sure I would have shouted and somebody would have found me.
Gracious. Well, we've now found out that what's wrong with Toby is he took in too much toxic fumes and it altered his brain back in the day. But speaking of someone that has never had his brain altered, the audio director of Red Rocks Church and Red Rocks Worship and the real-life inspiration for the Terminator, Jesse O'Brien. Jesse, welcome to the pod. Would you go under a tunnel and spend hours doing what Toby did?
I have pretty low standards. So no, I am not above that. And I have done similar type work. Just getting cozied up with the black widows and spiders and cobwebs.
For real?
What kind of critters?
Puts hair on your chest.
What kind of critters do you guys deal with in Colorado?
The worst one is probably a black widow.
All right.
That's probably the worst.
It's not bad, Blake.
It puts hair
other
on
than
your
that,
chest.
it's gophers and chipmunks and mouses, maybe a rat here or there.
Puts hair on his chest and poison in his veins. You guys are more durable than me. I'm big, but I'm doughy. I can be.
But you also have no hair on your chest, so maybe we need to stick you down in these death tunnels to actually turn you into a man.
And then the gopher will fight me, and then I'll have to save the chipmunk from him, and I'm dead.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, Jesse, that's part of your background. We would love to hear some more of your background. How did you get into production? You're a 2-time guest on the Church Gear podcast. So for those,
I'm honored to be here, guys. Thanks for having me twice. So to recap on my life, I was told very specifically to not tell my life story. So here's a quick synopsis.
By Blake.
By Blake, just to clarify, yes. Toby was like, bro, just tell us how it happened. Blake was like, nah, wrap it up. 3 minutes.
We're telling pre-production. All right.
No, so I started in a recording studio out of high school. Well, sort of out of high school. I went to Full Sail University for 1 year, 1 full calendar year. Moved right back to Colorado, started a recording studio, interned there for years, unpaid. All you Gen Zs out there, unpaid for years, believe that.
I'm not a Gen Z. How freaking dare you?
You're unpaid.
Oh, yes.
Wait, you guys are getting paid for this?
Yeah, exactly.
That's my favorite meme. Yes, I send that to Toby at least every quarter.
Yeah, so then that turned into become, engineering at the studio, and that turned into my full-time gig for a good 12 years. And then the studio came into the studio, Red Rocks Worship, Red Rocks Church at the time. Worship wasn't quite its own entity at that moment, but they came into the studio and were like, hey, we need somebody to mix our online services every week. So they would courier a hard drive after Sunday to the studio where I worked. I would mix it and then courier it back, and they would post it the following week. So did that for a number of years. And then that turned into, hey, we want to be live weekend of. So what do we have to do? And I was like, you got to build a broadcast studio. So they did that. That turned into doing broadcast live in the room that we're in actually right now, or that I'm in. And then they started opening up campuses. So that moved into front of house stuff, a lot of front of house stuff, which moved into albums, which moved into, I worked at a studio. So that was the natural next step. And they started doing albums out of the studio. And then that turned into, hey, let's just hire you and make you the audio guy. So that's where I am now.
What is that called, Blake? It's not gaslighting, but they're slowly but surely ingratiating him. And then all of a sudden he wakes up one morning and is like, do I work here? Uh-oh.
I think that's called Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're capitalist.
Yeah. Isn't it like common law employment?
Maybe that's it. So, Blake, one day you'll actually work here because you've just been here so long.
Yeah, we'll have a common law marriage, Toby, you and me.
I love that.
Scared. So,
I love that for you guys.
Jesse, are you done with the Red Rocks tour? You were just on it. You guys still going? Tell us how that's been going.
Yep. No, we are done. We just finished. In fact, right before this, we were unloading our trailer and trying to figure out where to stash all our stuff. So we are done for the year. We have a couple of one-offs. We're actually going to the Multitracks conference here in the next week or 2 weeks, and then a couple of conferences. But as far as like extended tour, we're done.
Okay. And obviously, Red Rocks Worship, you guys are, world famous. You travel like Taylor Swift's tour with 90 semis. But if that's not the case, how do you guys tour? What's your gear that you take with you? And what do you have to rely on the venue or the church to do? And what unique challenges does that create for you guys?
Yeah, we're just like the Taylor Swift tour in that we play music on stage. Other than that, there's nothing similar. So yeah, we've kind of grown as that's the goal, right? The tour grows every tour we go on, or every extended chunk. So now we tour with all our own audio gear, instruments. So that's from, our instruments all the way down to mics, all the way down to cables, all the way to in-ear rigs, to consoles. So the only thing audio-wise that we're relying on the venue or the church is their PA. As far as lighting goes, this is actually the first tour we brought some of our own lights. We brought 6 movers and six blinders. So very minimal, but it was enough to kind of create some dynamics on stage. And then we tie into their rig typically, so we can add a little pop to what they have, if needed.
What's your front of house console you're traveling with?
QL5, baby.
Oh, yeah. We got some of those at Church Gear. Look at us go.
I knew we had a lot of CL5s. I didn't know we had QL5s.
I feel like we just got one in.
Okay.
They go faster.
Yep.
But Jesse, what's it like, night in and night out, as far as like which PA you're plugging into? Do you, advance this stuff ahead of time and only go to venues that has a good PA? Or are you like, nope, I'm just...
That's the goal. We want to hit venues that has, somewhat adequate technology to support of, because, for lack of a better term, there is a little bit of a brand that we want to make sure that gets out there, but also we're not super set on like, if it's not that, then we're out. Right. And usually we find that like the worship experience is deeper and spreads further when there's kind of lack of technology, funny enough. And in the churches that are like going in, we're going, oh boy, here we go. This is like bare bones. We don't have, this is, from a production standpoint, maybe a little embarrassing. Usually by the end of the night, it's like, okay, God works in those situations more, I find. So with all that being said, yeah, it varies so wildly from church to church, venue to venue. Some of them are, we've played venues that are just maybe a little bit more of like 2 speakers on poles with 2, 15-inch subs on the floor, and that's it. And it's a 600-seater room. So it's like, but you do the best you can. And I kind of look out of it after I get over the bitterness of it. I try to switch it and be like, okay, this is a good challenge. I'm gonna make this room sound the best it's ever sounded. And my goal at that point is like, I want the people there to be like, wow, we were about to buy a whole new PA, but maybe we could reconsider a little bit, or maybe we can change our thinking, or, that's kind of my secret, ulterior motive in those situations.
So,
and then there's other venues that we just played a 2,000 seater in Austin, and, it had like 20 boxes on either side, arrays with, adequate, just so big and powerful to fill the room very, very well.
Yeah.
So it's just all over the place.
So we're talking specifically about, creative solutions to putting gear in place without thinking like this is going to cost zillions of dollars, and specifically wrote a chapter about this in my book and interviewed you for it. So use a lot of, the story you told me in Red Rocks, and just going back to my first experience at Red Rocks, I had a perception of you guys. You're a mega church, you guys were talked about a lot, and you're blowing up. Kind of during COVID and post-COVID, a lot of people were watching your live stream and just talking about the amazing things you guys were doing. You had, a ton of campuses at this point. And so I walk into your broadcast campus and I'm like, where am I? I thought I was going to broadcast. And you're like, no, bro, this is broadcast.
Yeah.
And so my, perception of a mega church and a mega system and mega dollars was just, poof, gone. So talk to us just a little bit about, and I know you guys have done some upgrades since then, but essentially like, what your broadcast campus actually looks and functions like, as opposed to how people might often think it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So our broadcast location is our smallest location, funny enough. And so it's about a 600 seater. It's an old dinner theater, or used to be an old dinner theater, with a whole, it used to have a full-blown commercial kitchen with a big, in fact, this room used to be the walk-in freezer of the kitchen. So it's, and dinner theaters aren't the biggest, they're not a super big venue like you see a mega church, might look like. So it's relatively small, and people always have that kind of look, and they go in and they're like, oh, wait a minute. This is not what I feel like I've seen online. We love it because it's very easy to control, both with video and sonically. It shoots really well. Mm-hmm. There's no big poles or support columns or anything in the way of camera shots. And we can the cameras make it look maybe larger than it is, which is very cool. But yeah, it's also, not only is it our smallest location, it's kind of our jankiest location. This isn't the original location. This is the first location we moved to out of our original location. And, so like any growing church goes through, it's a hodgepodge. It's kind of Frankenstein together. It's like everything's always in fight or flight, and it's like, oh, just add this real quick, and just kind of run these cables here. So it's years of that, as you all, I'm sure, know how that happens. So it kind of turns out to be this kind of Frankenstein thing. Now we've since been very proactive on going through and cleaning that stuff out, and like, okay, we just need a refresh here, and we last year put in the L2, and we've redone our whole network infrastructure, got fiber internet everywhere, and all that kind of stuff. So we've cleaned it up, and we're still in the process. In fact, on this wall, I don't know if you guys can hear it. Hopefully this mic isn't nice and isolated. but there's construction, like they're pounding and sawing like crazy on this other wall because we're redoing office spaces.
That's incredible. We can't hear it at all.
Yeah, Blake often
Sweet.
worries because Blake, I won't say nothing about acoustics, but like whatever next to nothing is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so often he is worried about, the testing going on here at Church Gear, the guys that are working out in the tech lab or the warehouse. And I'm like, dude, with these SM7s, like they're so directional, you won't be able to hear any of that.
Well, because I can hear it, it's that the mic doesn't hear it. And like when we test some speakers, guys, we blow out sounds that sound like a whale is exploding on the surface of the sun.
It's called white noise or pink noise, depending on the day.
I call it Blake wants to die noise. And so I just wanted to make sure it doesn't suddenly come and kill people on the podcast.
So, Jesse, I feel like listeners are thinking to themselves, wait a second, like I've seen Red Rocks online and the product is amazing. And it's a worship experience. I use product very loosely. And they're thinking, you're in a 600-seat room and you did things really janky. And then I saw that and was blown away. Like all of a sudden this inspiration of tell me more, maybe I could actually do that at my church. So, the perception is you guys are a mega church. You spend mega dollars on gear. But tell us some of those janky ways in which you made it work for years without spending mega dollars.
Teach us your janky ways, Jesse.
That's right.
I mean, that's what you're saying, Toby.
I like that. So we, I think, I don't know what the classification is of mega churches, but I don't think we've ever really felt like we were a mega church kind of growing up in the church, because we did the multiple location situation where it was like, okay. And the money kind of evens out, I think, in a way where it's like, instead of it all being in one conglomerate location where all the money gets pooled into all the gear for one location, then it's like, yeah, I can get whatever I want. Where we are still very location based. So it's like, when it comes to the church, the campus level, they're bringing in as much as a church that size would anyway. And we try to keep it isolated. So we're not looking at budgets going like, yeah, I just pick whatever I want at every location, because it's like, well, we have multiple locations we have to facilitate. Mm-hmm. It's not just like one big one that we can carry out. So it's never, to us, it hasn't really felt that big. And also, I honestly think that our growth trajectory when we were really kind of booming prevented us from getting really nice gear, right? Because we never had the forethought to like plan ahead very well, because plans change so often, and we're just moving so fast that it was like any long-term plan we'd think about, it'd be irrelevant 2 years later or a year later. So it was always more of a catch up, which kind of forced us to, I think, stay a little bit gritty and work with what we had in the best, to the best we can. I also think, and I want to be careful with how I say this, because I don't want to call the talent that's out there. But one of the biggest things that allows you to maximize the gear that you have without needing to go get the cool new best thing is being good at your craft. Right? Like before you start worrying about what new camera to get or what new lights to get or what new console or mic or whatever to get, focus more on like, how can I make this better? Mm-hmm. How can I treat this better? How can I perfect my skills so that I know that I'm getting the most out of this microphone or the most out of whatever piece of gear I'm using? And then it's like, then when you really start like, getting good at that or getting good at your craft, then you truly are making informed decisions of going like, okay, we really actually do need an upgrade here.
And
I see too commonly, especially when we go out and tour, I see too commonly where it's like, it's really easy to blame the gear and it's really easy to blame the or lack thereof. Mm-hmm. It's easy to be like, well, if only it would sound good, if only it would look better, if only. And it's like, most churches nowadays, not all, but most churches have very adequate technology to make an online or make something sound pretty darn good in a room.
Yeah. And so the first time I visited, it was so funny when I asked you what the PA was. And the response was like, well, it's sort of a
I'm afraid to answer
piecemeal.
that.
Yeah. I mean, it was the array system was built of 3 different brands as needs arose. And I would assume now your new L2 system, like, I'm sure it's phenomenal and it was time for you guys, but you had this older system that you hadn't upgraded yet that you were saving however much money by continuing to use. What was your philosophy there of getting the most out of that rather than going to an L2 system until it was like you were confident it was time?
Cost. That was the number one pushback.
Yeah.
Was a decent or a professional grade PA. They're not cheap.
Yeah.
Especially for what we do. We want kind of an overkill of a system. We want plenty of low end, so its cost was the biggest thing holding back. And it got to a point, I remember specifically, and maybe this will be a different question, but it got to a point where that PA was just kind of failing. Amps were going, boxes were just tired. It was just having, more issues. And it was like rock solid. And then, literally we made the decision as like, gosh, I'm just really nervous about this system holding out. So we went, the leadership made the decision and we're like, cool. We ordered the boxes. They're in the mail, getting freighted to our integrator. And our system was just like, it almost like she heard she was being replaced and she was giving up. She's like, fine. Is that how you feel about me? So, it all worked out in the end. And the one that really pushed over the edge is one of the amps or something went out. I forget what it was. It was one of the amp. No, it was the DSP. The DSP went out, which shut down the whole rig. And it was like Sunday morning, the worst possible time it could happen. So we threw up. We had a God Behind Bars campus that shut down. So we had a simple PA, a couple like QSC something flown that we had just recently took down. We're just sitting in storage in the backstage, and we're like, all right, get them out, roll them out. And we whipped out this quick little PA. And leadership was like, okay, it's time.
That's a good tactic.
Yeah.
So, Jesse, when your system was rock solid, before it started failing, let's just theoretically say new system is 3 times as much, and I'm just making up numbers.
Yeah.
Are you
easily
thinking, when me, Jesse O'Brien, is sitting behind the console, that a new system is going to sound 3 times as good? Or how would you relate that math?
Yes, that's a really, really good question. This is a perfect example of why the new cool stuff isn't always better. And just doing what I do and being around it and going on tour, I kind of know this going in, where it's like, okay, we're about to be in control of a fire hose right now. Right. So we have to be very careful. We can't just like full bore this thing because nobody will come to church. Right. So there was a lot of like effort of like the guys that mix. Andrew Leopard, he's a great dude. He mixes front of house at our broadcast for the most part. So it would, we had lots of conversations like, hey dude, let's really kind of focus in on like the level that it's typically been at and make it shine there, even though it has far more headroom than we could ever dream to use in this little 600-seater dinner theater. But it's all better, right? I mean, that's kind of how you want a system. You want it to be overbuilt to an extent, so you have plenty of headroom, and that's where the speakers sound the best, right? Where they're not being overly saturated and overly pushed.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, for a church limping along, so to speak, and I think we all use that term very loosely, that maybe you have an older EAW system, maybe it's 12 to 15 years old, maybe you're like, it doesn't sound that good anymore. Question number 1, does it need servicing? Do you need to replace some drivers? Does it need to be tuned? Question number 2, like as you were alluding to, can your front of house guy get better at his craft Because
Yes.
if you just buy a new $200,000 system and put it in there and your front of house guy still isn't that good at his craft, you're going to be like, it doesn't sound that much better. And I just spent $200,000.
Yeah. And if anything, it might be more offensive than it was before because now you have this clean new, system that is very direct and very, so you hear the issues a lot more now.
Yeah.
So here's my thing. Let's, speaker manufacturers to some extent, even at a prosumer level, are pretty darn good speakers, right? If you take a QSC 8-inch speaker, right? Just the throw and go, quick and go. Like if you play a Spotify on that, it's going to sound pretty darn good, right? There's going to be plenty of low end, good high end. Like it's not like so atrocious where it's like, oh my gosh, this thing sounds terrible, right? So because of that alone, why can't a mix sound good out of a speaker like that as well, right? Most of these speakers, including EEW makes some great speakers. Even in the 90s, they made great speakers, and I see a lot of these speakers from early 2000s, late 90s, like EEW is the big point source box things that you see in stadiums still. Like they're great. They're full range. They're great sounding speakers. So there's really just no excuse or reason why they can't sound good or a mix can't sound good, right? If you can play Spotify or your favorite song out of those speakers and they sound pretty darn good, then there's no reason why your mix can't. So if you're blaming a system like that for a bad mix, there's some reflection that you probably should need to do on your own craft. And not to say like get better, but also, it's get better.
He didn't want to say it, but he had to say it.
Yeah.
That is a good
I had
point.
to say it.
If the Spotify sounds good, it should sound good overall. Because these are extremely adequate wavelengths. That's EAW's tagline. And you can make a good mix on extremely adequate wavelengths.
You are extremely adequate as well, Blake.
That is the nicest thing you've said about me this month. I'll take it.
And you look at like the curve of a speaker, like their goal is to make it relatively flat, and most are pretty darn close.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing you'll do with a better, bigger system is to get louder. But like if your mix is questionable in the first place, you just have a louder, questionable mix, which will be more offensive to people.
Yeah.
And I see this a lot too, where it's like we spent the money, we got the cool new PA, but like it just doesn't feel better. It didn't fix our issue that we thought we had. Mm-hmm. And I actually get consulting calls a lot of churches like, hey, can you come and help? We got this system. It just doesn't feel right yet. And it's like, I come in and, it's a tricky situation for me because it's usually the leadership wants me to fix things, but the problem typically is a person or the people working it. So it's like, okay, how do I kind of like, hey, the problem here is the process that you're using.
Yeah.
Right. You shouldn't have to EQ your mains with 37 bands of EQ. Like first thing, wipe all that out. Oh, wow. It opens up. Now you're not fighting yourself. Stuff like that. Like it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So to fix a person, instead of taking your tech kit, do you just take a gun, just put them out of their misery? I meant send them an MXU login and then they're good.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say.
Yes. Here's a subscription. Study for 3 years.
Yeah. And, I love what you're saying about kind of gear in general. You're saying once it's a prosumer brand, like once it's up to that level of professional quality, like it's the law of diminishing returns. If you have an SM58 is $100 and you could have a $100 microphone, or you could have a $10,000 microphone and it's only going to sound about 10% better, maybe.
Yes.
And so if you have a terrible singer, somebody that's off key, not good at their craft.
How dare you talk bad about Sister Margaret? You leave Sister Margaret alone.
Worse through the $10,000 mic because you can hear them a little bit better.
Yeah, and you hear all the issues better too. And that's so true. I like diminishing returns. It's like after prosumer, it's like, sure, you're getting a better system, and physically and scientifically it is a better system. But reality is like, man, you're striving hard for that last 5, 10, 5, 3%, right? You're paying a lot of money to try to get into that. But if your skill level isn't there, you're just, if I like to break it down to percentages, even though it's just not related, but if your mix is at 30%, buying a nice system isn't going to get your mix to even 40%. It's going to make the 30% more revealing, right? Your abilities will get it to 60, 70, 80, where it's like, oh, now I'm really starting to see a difference here. Gear will not do that for you.
Dang.
At least in audio.
So we can't buy quality? That's a bummer.
If you've got the skills, then you can start buying quality.
I've just been charging the Church Gear card every day. I'm like, quality. This is making sense.
Yeah,
Why can't I get quality?
You're getting nowhere. That's the problem, Blake.
Dang it.
And also, my lane is audio for sure, but I've seen the same thing in video and lighting.
Yeah.
If your lighting's off, your video's not going to look good. And it doesn't take all that much to get the lighting right on stage and to get your cameras dialed. Like most cameras these days are designed for all sorts of lighting situations, and they do a really good job at that. So you should have plenty of resources to be able to dial these cameras and lights in to get a good look.
Do you have any specific examples at Red Rocks where, vision sort of outpaced budget, where leadership came to you and said, we really want to do this, and you guys are like, and what do we have in budget? Like $13? And I mean, you talked about being scrappy, being, kind of janky. Yep. Do you have any specific moments that come to mind when you think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's always a little bit of that rub happening between leadership and production, right? There's always that exists, that like, that's the border between leadership and production on what to spend, where to spend it. I think we've been pretty good and I think where we've been successful at Red Rocks is our production. We don't typically make those moves. Up until recently, we've kind of switched over, but before that, we didn't really make those upgrade moves until it was like, yeah, we're dead in the water. Like we have to make this purchase.
Do you recommend people let it get to that point? Or would you have liked to pull the trigger sooner? Or just sometimes that's the only way you can get them to see the need for the gear?
Well, sometimes it's unfortunately, I think for production, it's part of their job for production is to educate the leadership into why this gear is important and why you need reliability and, all the things, right? Because they don't know. That's not their job. They don't know what a compressor does or how this compressor is better than this compressor or this speaker is better than that. Like they have no idea, right? And they're not required to. So it's part of our job in production to educate them on that. And sometimes that takes a catastrophic failure to really drive a point home. Not saying that any church should rely on that, but sometimes it happens. And we've just, I think as Red Rocks as a whole, we've just always pushed past probably what was responsible to push past before the decision was made to get the upgrade or to get the new piece of gear, which has kind of made us scrappy. And it's I enjoy it. I like being able to be like, all right, in the tour situation where we have speakers on poles, cool. Let's make those things sing. Mm-hmm. Let's do it. I could sit and complain all day and try to blame it on this or that, or like, well, if I had 7 more subs, it would sound better. But at the end of the day, I have one day to make it decent. So let's do that. Let's focus on that instead of trying to complain, which just doesn't get anybody anywhere.
Yeah. Can you think of specific moments at your time in Red Rocks where you're like, I really want this thing. I don't have any budget for it. Let's find creative ways to make it work. Like, let's sell the stuff we don't need. Or, I'm specifically looking at those consoles sitting behind you.
Toby, not
Yes.
everybody sold cocaine to get their gear that they needed back in the day.
But some people did. Some people did.
Yes.
Don't put him on the spot. But really, Jesse, tell us how you did it.
Yeah. So I think in Red Rocks, I think the trickery, if you will, becomes from like using events to justify purchasing gear.
We have heard this before. Hit it, Jesse.
You know?
Hit it, yes.
And hopefully none of my Red Rocks family watches this, although they probably do, and hopefully I don't get in trouble. But, it's like, hey, we have a big conference coming up, or a big, conference that we're doing for somebody. It's like, cool. Well, in order for this to happen well and reliably, we could use some more in-ears. Oh, so you want 12 people on stage? Well, they are going to need 12 IM mixes, all stereo, and we only have 8. So we're going to have to buy 4 more. Right? That sort of stuff. Like, we play those games all day long. We have the funniest thing. We've been on tour for a while now, for years. And our tracks rig, it's just a Scarlett 4-channel interface. So it's click, cues, tracks left, right. We've been rocking that thing for years. And we've come across where it's like, it would be really nice to have more outputs, but we don't. Right. And all it takes is $1,000 and an 18IO Scarlett interface. Right. It was never justified to get, because it's like, well, this is working. Why do we need more outputs? Mm-hmm. So then we're doing Red Rocks. We're doing a show on the 4th, Tuesday, at Red Rocks Amphitheater. And it's a big deal for our church. It's not just a worship thing. It's like a big deal. So it's like, we were doing click, cues, tracks left, right, but then we also needed SMPTE for lights and cameras. It's like, oh, well, we need 5 outputs. Well, we need an 8-channel interface. Sweet. Purchased. So you were doing things like that, but best be sure that interface will be going on tour with us after the fact.
Yeah.
Nice.
So doing stuff like that.
Using events, and hey, we have a budget for an event. Great. Mm-hmm. I have an idea for your budget. To succeed your vision, to make your vision happen.
We had one guy, it was funny. This was years ago, but everybody has like their budget, or each campus has their budget for the year. And then at the end of the year, they can do like capital requests, right? Of like, hey, I want need this big thing. Here's what I'm thinking. And they'll either say yes or no, or pare it down or whatever, right? So he was a tech director. So he basically did, he kept it under the table by doing just small payments on it. So leadership didn't know that, but then at the end of the year, it was like enough to purchase the whole thing without doing a capital request. And then they found out, and it was like, no, you can't do that either.
So then what happened? They make him sell it. He get fired. They draw and quarter him.
No, he did get fired, but not for that reason. Years later, he got fired for different reasons.
It's the whole ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
I live that way, but it does burn us eventually. I'm still waiting for mine. The thing is, if they fire him, just keep showing up to work. That's what I do. Just keep showing up. Yeah,
and we don't pay you, and then whatever you call your work, we get for free.
I need to check my bank account. It would be quite a disaster if I had no money in there. Jesse, tell me about a moment where everything went wrong, how you fix it, if you had to address it with leadership. You're telling us about all these other things that are on the brink of dying. I'm sure that's created some really fun moments for Red Rock
Yes.
worship.
It's constant. We're just feel like we're chasing our heads almost every week. But some notable ones, I think that's also part of the job too, is just kind of disaster control. Some notable ones, let me think. We had one recently where our building has 3-phase power, and one of the phases went out because of construction that's happening right there. one of the construction crews hit a wrong cable and one leg of power went out. And it was Sunday morning. So, with power, you have two legs of 120, so three legs, you get three legs of 120. So you can get like 210 if you need it, whatever, right? So
570,
one leg went
1080.
Yeah.
Shut up.
You need a lot of power for that L2,
That's right.
So one of the legs went out, which means like a third of our gear went out. And you can't like how the legs are spread out through the building. You can't like, well, I'll just move this light over to this outlet. I mean, you could, but their switches went out and it was just a disaster. So half of our lighting rig went out. Our house lights went out. The PA went out. No, the subs went out. So it was like just a third of our whole system went out. So so that's happening. And then something with Resi, we didn't schedule Resi right for the playback. So it was just like all of it went bad. It was like, man, online's messed up, in the room's messed up. So we ended up, Sean, our lead pastor, he came in at last minute. He's like, I'll just preach for the room. Just for our broadcast location. It's not going out online anywhere. All the other campuses got their feed just fine from the night before, so they were all good. And we set up a quick little PA. We used one of our old QL1s for a console. We found an outlet that worked for our PA in the console. And that's also what's nice about having a smaller room is we can still pull things off like this. We're not trying to project to 2,000 people. So we did it, and it was one of the better services I've ever witnessed or been a part of. Sean was just kind of unhinged a little bit because he wasn't going to the world and he was just this room. And it was like last minute. He said some things that, might have been in cancel territory, but nobody knows about it. So it was one of the better services. It was funny. It was fun. People loved it. Sometimes those things you got to embrace them.
I think that, the more stories we've heard on here where everything is just like back to basics,
Yeah.
people really get back to like, just the heart of worship. It's a better service. People really enjoy it. And, me and Toby are always down for a good cancelable comment. I mean,
100%.
We edit, 1,000 out a week, 2,000?
Easily.
Self-edit, 2 million a second.
Yeah. But Jesse, I mean, you said the same thing over and over and over, that it's not the gear.
Yeah.
It's not the gear. Like, build up your skills. Even without the gear, you're creating these amazing moments that are some of the best worship services you've ever been to. It's not the gear. And so even churches out there listening and thinking like, I want to do things like Red Rocks. Well, step one, it's not the gear, because Red Rocks isn't putting, millions of dollars into the gear. You guys are building up your skills and then just making it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the grittiness is important, right? It's, I think we've built to a point where we've built up to a point where it's like churches and people are looking at us going like, how can we achieve that? And we're kind of looking back and like, man, all we did was like survive. Like there was never this like goal of I'm going to be not the best, but it was just like, I want to get better at what I do. He wants to get better at what he does. She wants to get better at what they do. The worship wants to get better at what they do, at writing and all of it, right? And we're all just kind of on the same page in a similar, moving forward direction. And that's what made it happen. It wasn't gear. The gear came second. The gear was like an afterthought, and kind of a panicked afterthought of like, oh, we got to kind of try to make this work somehow. And that's the important takeaway is like we never followed the gear. The gear always followed us, and it was usually a hint inadequate.
Yeah. I like that. He just said the magic word, Toby. He just said takeaway.
Yeah.
So Jesse, would that be your takeaway? Is that the gear followed, and like maybe if you want to build on that anymore? I mean, like I think you can give people the confidence to stretch themselves even if they don't think they can because they don't have the gear.
Yes. I think online and is a cancer for this thought, right? Because you see people all over the place saying like reviewing this and like, oh, you got to check this plugin out. You got to do this. This is my cool new vocal chain. And manufacturers, Waves, they're constantly coming out with new plugins that do something, but it's like, man, you're really searching at this point. You know, you're really trying to search for a new thing that a plugin can do. But it's like, people have been making good sound before any of this stuff for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. So is it really necessary? So online is just flooded in it, you know, from a consumer or from somebody that doesn't totally maybe not know his skill quite yet, or know, you know, he's looking at it going like, oh geez, there's just like so much I have to know, so much I have to do to get a good sound. It's like, kind of just forget about it. You know, it's like and I don't want to call anybody out, but there was a new mic that dropped for a kick drum. And it was like, people online were like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing since sliced bread on kick drum. And it was like, yeah, it's cool. It probably sounds good, right? But there's a whole bunch of other microphones that also sound good on kick drum. Mm-hmm. You know, that's not buying that microphone for your kick. I promise you is not going to make or break the sound of your kick drum. I promise you it's not going to. You know, it's like get a 57, put it in a kick, and you could craft it to make it sound decent.
Yep.
You know, so it's just one of those things, like, try not to get trapped in the endless cycle of reviews online and, you know, people like me getting on and back, this is what I do on my vocal chain, right? Take all those with a bit of a grain of salt.
Yeah, I mean, Waves really are just wildly average variance equippers, so it's not like it's going to really make your mix all that different.
You need to get off AI, Blake. It's
I made that myself. I typed it because I can't remember anything. Jesse, I can't remember stuff, but I do remember that we're super appreciative of you joining us this episode. Is there anything you want to plug, anywhere you want to point people towards? Certainly not to another, you know, doohickey, apparently, as we need to all strip it down a little.
Yeah. Anything I want to plug? Well, I would say my kind of YouTube, but that's been dusty and dormant. A lot like the crevice that you crawled through.
Yeah.
For a few years now. So I would say go there, but there's nothing new there. There's just some cobwebs and old stupid videos with me wearing pit vipers.
I
but
love
hey,
the book.
If that's your thing, go there. It's binging on broadcasts on YouTube.
Hey, this stuff.
Maybe I'll throw some more videos up there.
Yeah. Or hear your mixes with Red Rocks and Red Rocks Worship.
Yeah. Yep. Or that. And my Instagram at the _mixing_guy. I'm always posting little tidbits and little things that you should take with a grain of salt. Don't take it as a Bible, because most of them are pretty dumb.
Love that.
If you'd like some dumb salt, go over to Jesse O'Brien's Instagram. I think it's
Yes.
delicious.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, Jesse.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It was fun, as usual.
And now it's time for a Church Tech Confessional, where church production people confess the worst thing they've ever done in church production. Here's one now.
I was doing stagehand for my production team, and our pastor uses a stage TV. And so during the bumper video, I brought out the stage TV, and we always lock the wheels so that way when he touches the TV, it doesn't roll away, right? So I bent down to lock the wheels, and when I stood up, I banged my head on the corner of the TV, and I gave myself a concussion in front of 500 people, and I almost passed out on stage. Somehow I was able to stumble off, but it was still the most embarrassing time that I've had on production.
Hey, do you have your own Church Tech Confessional that's, 45 seconds to 2 minutes? Send it to blake@churchgear.com, and you might just hear it on the podcast.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
All right, Blake, so yet again, here's an example of I thought I was so smart on this, but really what I did is I took Jesse and Red Rock's story and put it into the chapter on my book on creative budgeting and solutions to have great worship experiences without the mega money.
Yeah, so if someone was listening to this episode and they're like, I want to do everything they just said, where should they go?
They should probably go to buy my book at tobywalters.com or churchgear.com/tobywalters. They are the same place.
And maybe we could buy the URL, how to save money going under a crevice.org.
And also the hidden chapter in my book is how to crawl out of that crevice.